Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the CFO Connect Summit. This year's summit is all about AI in finance. It's designed to help you stay ahead of the curve, hopefully, and from panel discussions to practical use cases and demo of AI-powered tools. This summit is hosted by CFO Connect, a global community of more than 12,000 finance leaders, and it's powered by Spendesk. I'm your host today, Jérôme Tomasini. I lead startup and investor partnership at Stripe. Stripe, we build economic infrastructure for AI companies, and we equip today more than 78% of the Forbes AI 50 list. We help them accelerate growth via the link network. We help them monetize usage through subscription and invoicing, and we help them also expand globally through our optimized checkout suite and our stablecoin support. As you may have heard, default to AI mandates are spreading. Coinbase, in particular, made recent news. The real question then for you, CFO and finance leaders in the room, is how to turn that intent into an operating model that hopefully improve your P&L. To keep us practical today, we are joined by two seasoned operators building and shipping AI in the wild. We have Gabriel Hubert, co-founder and CEO of Dust, and we have Julien Lafouge, CFO of Photoroom. In the next 20 minutes, we'll have a conversation, the three of us, about that challenge that we have about making sure that AI can spread in the enterprise. We have a lot of ground to cover, and sorry to spoil, I'll give you a bit of themes that we are going to talk about. What an executive mandate actually look like, and the signal that a CFO or CEO should insist on. The famous build versus buy dilemma, and how to ponder that. How to empower your team to build agents in particular. How AI reshapes hiring, and also CFO compatible pricing. I know it's super important to you to know how to buy things. And hopefully we close with a 30-day checklist so that it's quite actionable for you at the end. During our conversation, please use our Q&A tab to submit your question. Make sure they are short, concrete, very CFO oriented, shouldn't be too hard. I'll monitor live and we'll make sure to select a few during the Q&A section, the 15 minutes at the end. Without further ado, I'd love for Gabriel and Julien to introduce themselves rather quickly. So guys, you have 30 seconds to basically give us an elevator pitch about what you're building, and then we'll kick things off.
I'm going to go first. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us and thanks for the intro, Jérôme. My name is Gabriel. I am the co-founder and CEO of Dust. Dust is a horizontal platform that allows fast-moving companies to design, deploy, and maintain AI agents that are connected to internal data, sometimes sensitive data, and supports internal business pipelines. We'll talk about different roadmaps, but we really want to make every person at the company do a better version of their work and collaborate with others on our platform. And before that, I was the chief product officer at Allen, an insurance company focused on the healthcare sector. Prior to that, I was at Stripe for 5 years.
Lafouge, CFO Photoroom. Before that, I've been CFO of startup scale-ups for almost 10 years. Before that, I was at Spendesk and even before at BlaBlaCar. And Photoroom actually provides a complete solution to professionals from one-person shows to very big companies like enterprises such as Decathlon, Amazon, and so on, for their basically all image editing, creating their visual, developing their brands, logos, etc. And our solution is based on AI, basically.
What's really interesting in both of you that you're both working and building AI native companies, and you're also like from both sides of the table, I would say. Julien, you're a CFO. Gabriel, you're probably sometimes selling to CFO or actually explaining the value of Dust. So it will probably, hopefully make a very interesting conversation, very multifaceted. Maybe let's start with you, Gabriel. I was mentioning in the intro that the default to AI mandates are spreading everywhere. Shopify kickstarted things. Open Door, Coinbase also made some headlines about firing engineers that are not using AI products. When you see those like C-levels, CEOs, CFOs, obviously many in the room today are CEOs that are declaring AI is the priority in their company, what are the 2 or 3 signals that you assess to make sure they are serious and it's not just theater of wishful thinking in terms of their AI transformation?
I think it's always interesting to understand what the agenda might be. And we've seen some cases of leaders declaring that the priority was AI while trying to explain to the market a certain position that they had on costs and how they wanted to cut them. What I'm most excited about, the examples that you gave, are leaders that are trying to maximize upside. They have very ambitious goals for their own companies. They see a lot of growth in the future. And so they really believe that this technology is more about rewiring how people think and work rather than saving costs in the short term. So the 2 to 3 signals that I look to map the declarations to are: 1, how much do these leaders also talk about AI in the roadmap of their own product? Because if they're really dissociating completely how LLMs might impact their product and how LLMs might impact the productivity of their teams, I'm going to have a hard time believing that they've looked at the details. 2, how broadly have they made AI tools available internally? And 3, how are they looking at return on investment or value? Is it simply short-term gains on very measurable impacts of initiatives? Is it the transformation of how the teams work, how individuals within the teams report progress and growth on these tools? There's a number of elements that I know we're going to discuss later. So I'd really try to map the big declaration to concrete examples of how they see this technology impacting them and their teams.
Super interesting. And I think building on that, from your CFO point of view, Julien, like we mentioned, like especially the bottom-up use of AI tools. As a CFO, yeah, you're also the custodian of the cost. And so what kind of governance model are you relying on enabling that bottom-up adoption, which will drive culture, without it to become a bit of an open bar? Like, do you have a framework to balance kind of this liberty and responsibility from teams?
Yeah, sure. So at Photoroom, we believe in kind of, freedom at work and good intent and people being responsible, and it works basically. So what we have is you're basically free to subscribe to the tools you need. We have one saying, which is if something costs like less than $100 and it saves you at least 1 hour, just don't ask, buy it and test it and you'll see. So that's the approach. It doesn't mean we don't have governance, but I think on my side, I start from the high level. So I apply to myself, the finance department first, and I look at the tools we use and kind of the productivity increase or efficiency that they bring and output. Because sometimes, there are things that I can do with either, typical AI or inside the company with Dust, because we use Dust for internal business cases that, before would have taken hours of an analyst. So basically what I do is I do the sum of the cost of everything we use, and I estimate how much we gain in productivity and efficiency. And basically, if I estimate I save 1 full-time employee, well, if the sum of the cost of the tools is less than that, I'm happy, right? Yeah. So that's more or less the ROI kind of approach. Sometimes it's it's kind of easy to model and to calculate, at least the orders of magnitude, and it doesn't need to be very precise. Sometimes it's more of a leap of faith, and at Photoroom, at least we always want to test and be at the forefront. So basically, we don't look at the cost first, but at what it can bring in terms of, increasing our revenues and making our customers happier and so on. So we first solve for that, customers, employees as well. And then we think about the return, but we give some time before we actually compute the returns. We don't do crazy things, and we don't bet the house on something that's too expensive. That's the approach.
And to build on that, we are seeing that in the US, like it's more than directional, it's kind of mandatory nowadays in some companies. It's tied to performance reviews sometimes. Obviously, Gabriel, you're in it, so I'm asking, but probably you know the answer. Like, are you using AI at Dust to build Dust? And Julien as well, like coming from a more finance, maybe conservative function, is it something that is mandatory and not just optional?
Yeah, I think it's mandatory to have thought about it before joining our company, because our company is really designed to deliver this to other companies. So why would you have applied to Dust in the first place? But I think what is behind some of the mandates that we're seeing is really just the simple question: why have you not tried? Because the cost of trying has gone to zero virtually. And so if you're not trying, I think on top of potentially getting those questions, what you're exposing is a lack of other traits that are generally correlated to being very positive and sought after traits in a company. Curiosity, an exploratory mindset, the ability to try and reinvent the way you do things so that the status quo doesn't become the default, and just generally an enthusiasm about seeing the parts of your job that you feel could be automated as not being a problem to automate. I think there's a clear delineation in companies between people who are sort of holding on to the tasks they have and see their value in delivering those tasks day after day, and people who think, you know what, the value I bring to the company is not just doing those tasks, it's also being a node for creativity and expedient decision making, proactive suggestions to the rest of the company. So if I can spend more time doing that and less time doing the stuff that's basically copying and pasting and moving documents around in some cases, I should be excited to do that. So I think that because it's become so easy to ask, why have you not even tried? We'll maybe talk about shadow IT and the fact that you do need to roll out tools that make it safe for your employees to try. But because the cost of trying has gone to zero, it's almost a question about your personality, your traits, and your ambition to be in the bucket of not really having explored.
Yeah, I agree. I will be brief, but I think that's the right framing. Cost of trying is virtually zero. On our side, I think it's the same. We work, we develop, and product based on AI, and we want employees to basically use AI effectively. So it's kind of part of the deal. And one thing that's very different from previous companies, I'm much older, so I've known a bit of all the eras, is that basically before asking a colleague, we actually look efficiently using Dust or something else. But basically, it's a bit like, when I ask my wife by being lazy, or where is XYZ, and she's like, well, just look and you'll find, you don't even need to know where it is, but if you look, you'll find. And I think that's the big difference. So when I arrived, I sometimes had the reflex of, oh, I'm gonna ask a colleague or someone in my team, and now we just don't do that. We find everything because we have the right tools and very easily. And same thing, if it's a simple business case, as I gave the example before, uh, just ask first, try, and if you don't get the right result, and sometimes that's the case. Well, train your AI. So today I had an example. We asked the AI to find something in our documentation, didn't find it properly, so we pointed to the right place, and it will learn and improve, and we're happy.
So in a very ironic way, using AI is making you more agentic, more autonomous, which is quite a fascinating feedback loop. Another question for you, Julien, actually, like now that we are all in agreement that it's the way forward, like then the question becomes like, do you build yourself for your own needs, or do you buy or at least partner? And how do you alluded to the answer a bit earlier, but how do you, as a CFO, how do you factor that like dilemma, and what's your framework?
So the short answer is we buy the best tools. We build the best tools for our customers, the best solution for image editing. And so we're so busy with that we don't want our engineers to spend their time on building internal things. We have one internal IT engineer to make some automations and so on. But basically, we know we will not make, do a better job at what Dust is doing than Dust. So basically, we buy. That's the short answer. Yeah.
I think that one of the ways in which I've seen companies reflect on this comes down to the different AI roadmaps that exist within a company. Every single company that is delivering software today has an AI roadmap for its product, as Julien was alluding to. And it probably has two other internal roadmaps, one for automations that really could be on the product side or on the internal productivity side, where you're trying to A to Z automate very well understood systems. And then there's this third bucket, which is how do we do the future of work? It seems like there are many, many gains as humans interact with each other and with machines. And so what are we going to do for that third part of the roadmap? The answer always ends up being that there's a rational split between build and buy when you can see your competitive advantage being compounded by learning what you're doing. So I think I'm always a little suspicious of companies that are outsourcing their core competency, what they want to be the best in the world at, which is the case of Photoroom on photo editing and the models they're delivering there. And then for day after day productivity tools, I think that in some ways we're replaying the game of the cloud era or some of the earlier document management tools that we saw. Just because you have a team of engineers that can build a chatbot on top of a retrieval augmented pipeline doesn't necessarily mean that they should be working on that full time. I've seen some companies that also do pretty poor accounting of costs when they say, well, we can just put one person on this full time and then they'll have sold it by the end of the year. And I'm like, sure, that person's making 150,000 euros and that's a cost to the company of almost 300,000 euros. Have you thought about that comparison? I will say that in the early days, 2 or 3 years ago, there was also this talent and culture dilemma for some companies where their engineering teams, if they did not have an AI roadmap to work on directly, were saying, hey, I'm gonna be interested in working on this, and either I get to work on this internally, or I'm probably going to leave the company and look for a job where I can work on this. And so for companies that don't have that powerful AI roadmap for their own product, there's been a 1 to 2 year phase of internal exploration, which I think is going to change over time as people settle down and understand that maintaining these tools is a little more costly than we anticipated. Some of the ways in which security and guardrails and actual agentic layers need to be thought about is more complex than we thought. So there may have been an initial assessment and now a new assessment that's going on.
And in terms of sometimes you need to push back or you need to not fire customers, but you need to just push back prospects saying like the tool we have is not good for you right now. I guess as a founder and you've done sales the first few years of this, were there any moments where you had to say, okay, we are not the right solution for you, it's better that you build it yourself, or it never happens nowadays?
I'll use one of the questions that I'm seeing on the chat to piggyback on that. Like, I think when people come to us and say, hey, I want to automate these 5 pipelines, can you do it for me? I tend to say, maybe there are automation frameworks like N8N that might be a better fit if you really want to plug in something where you feel like every step should be taken by a machine. But when you're interested in working on the interface between humans and machines, that's just a complicated problem. It's one that we're thinking about a lot and that I think is going to evolve very quickly. So this is the value that we're going to try and deliver. And that's where I think companies have to, and especially CFOs, have to maybe be at the table in understanding what the vision of the vendors that they're talking to is. Because right now we're looking at land grab dynamics, very different types of companies that are trying to add an AI offering to their existing product, other products that are coming out of the blue. And the strategic value that a CFO can bring to that conversation is to say, how do we think we're going to invest in making our products better, but then also making our team better? And where do we feel we have the capacity to explore, exploit, maybe think about augmenting our team over time? So I rarely find myself saying, hey, no, I don't think we're the best partner. But when I do, it's when I believe that the priorities of the team we're talking to are just not aligned with our vision, and that people are sort of trying to push us in a direction that we're not as excited to build in for the future.
And Julien, to you, in terms of like using agents, you're using Dust. Like what types of like ROI are you looking for? Like the time saved is a bit of like a no-brainer. Are there any other dimensions that you're measuring to justify or just to increase the use of agents for your teams, especially in the finance function?
So we don't have a very sophisticated models that calculate, the nitty gritty and with tons of hypotheses, because I think it's a bit worth it, to be honest. You're looking at, usually it should be quite obvious that yes, it brings a lot. As Gabriel mentioned earlier, at least twice, is what matters is the opportunity cost. What would your employees do with the time they free up? And this is like, it's not directly measurable, because if an employee saves, hours to work on your core product, core offering, what it means is it will impact your revenues positively, your enterprise value positively with a multiple, basically. And so the cost is really not the right angle. So I don't spend time modeling, oh, this cost us, 50K per year or whatever it is. And, am I getting back 300K? Because the truth is, if we use it rightly, it will not just save 300K or whatever it is, or maybe just the 50 it costs, but it will enable us to work on the right thing, to free up more time to work on for our customers and, and not on, inefficiencies. And you multiply this, you increase your revenue, multiply by your revenue multiple, and the value creation for the company is just immense compared to the cost of whatever you bought, if that makes sense.
And so we obviously focused on the finance function today, but I'll be curious in terms of your customer, Gabriel, like what kind of employees or teams or types of teams are leveraging more or faster or more easily those agents? Do you have like a bit of data on that to share across teams? Like from hearsay, I know that finance is a bit conservative, maybe because it's tied to money, and so they are just be sometimes later laggards or late adopter. Do you see like other types of functions embracing that faster?
It's funny because I think that in some cases, the finance teams are actually very good at spotting where their time is more valuable and how their time is being used. I think they fall in a broader category of experts within companies that are generally very qualified employees and that are sometimes spending their days answering very basic questions. The legal team, the finance team, the recruitment team are sometimes getting questions like, hey, are we allowed to sign this contract? Hey, what's our holiday policy? Hey, where can I find my headcount for my team? And then their answer is like, did you look at the doc? Did you look at the spreadsheet? Have you tried looking for this yourself? And these are very simple cases where we've seen high adoption among these expert teams, not just for themselves, but actually to deflect this traffic in a company so that they can avoid spending their day in Slack answering the same question again and again and again. So we see adoption in these companies of experts, not just on their job day to day, but also in their interface with the rest of the company. As far as other functions are concerned, two comments. One, I think there's more variance in adoption by function across different companies than there is variance among functions in the same company. So another way to say this is that if a company has a very clear mandate from the leadership down that this is a revolution that needs to be addressed and embraced, and there is enough empowerment for teams to explore, then we tend to see builders emerge across teams: legal team, marketing team, sales team, support team, engineering team. If, however, we have a company where the mandate is not clear, or it's not quite as incentivized to build out this new muscle of just augmenting yourself with AI, then generally the three functions that end up adopting the fastest are engineering, support and support operations, customer service operations, and sales enablement. But the two latest ones, support and sales, is sometimes under the pressure of a budget consideration. Hey, can we do more support with fewer support agents? Or can we do more outbound with fewer BDRs? As when the actual engineering is generally driven by exploration and genuine interest, where we see engineers saying, hey, this looks really interesting. I think it's going to change the way I need to work. So I need to look at this. What I'm very excited to see is that regardless of the function, what we see is some of the best adopters of this technology tend to share a mindset. And the mindset has a few characteristics. One, that they think transversely. So they don't just think about their job and their team. They think about the teams that they depend on and the teams that depend on them. Two, they're quite comfortable with exploring. This technology is really best suited for people who are able to iterate, try something that works better. Julien was giving an example saying, hey, it didn't find the document. We're pointing in the right direction. It's going to learn and get better. And three, they're very confident about the fact that they bring value to the company. So they're not worried about the tasks that they do today going away, because they think, hey, if the tasks that I do today go away, I'll find another place in the company to bring value. It's actually my job to bring value by finding this new. So these characteristics tend to be like very correlated with high performance, high potential employees who are the people that, the leaders want to keep in the company anyway.
It's a good segue to like a people question. We were mentioning augmenting. We haven't alluded to like replacing, but what's the impact of AI, especially for finance leaders in terms of hiring? We are entering planning season, so headcounts, probably the talk of many CFO today. How do you see the impact of AI in terms of how you recruit? Do you recruit different people, more junior, more senior, or do you recruit less? Is it something even the finance function itself? It's a bit of a meta question that you're factoring in with the rise of AI and AI agents in particular. Maybe question for you, Julien. Start.
Yeah. Okay. So if we talk about recruiting in general for the whole company, and I'm in charge of that right now, basically, some functions will be disproportionately affected. Okay. So, when you read in the newspaper that Microsoft announced layoffs because 30 to 35% of their code is AI generated, that for sure, that there's an impact and you have to live with your time and use the tools and so on. It doesn't mean that net you won't create developers' job. You will be able to do much more, but you should use these tools, right? So that's for sure a huge consideration in the staffing plan. Now, on finance specifically, I'll tell you, we're not such a small company. We've had 300 million downloads. We have, as I said, very big and small clients all over the world in 180 countries. And there are three of us in the finance function. And honestly, 5 years ago, without the tools that we have today, it would be at least double that. So the impact on junior finance role is real. I mentioned earlier that some business cases are done in 30 seconds with the right prompt, okay, by any AI. That's life. It doesn't mean that there are lots of studies by Agion in France and many economists about the net impact of all this on the job market. But you have statistics emerging that yes, some junior jobs are disappearing. They will be replaced by others, but it's not going to be, even for everybody, depending on what you studied and what you plan to do.
And
what about you, Gabriel? I know it's a topic that is close to your heart, I would say.
I think it's super important to be transparent, not naive, and we can still be optimistic. And I think we have to avoid the pitfall of feeling either naive or too pessimistic. Productivity is always one of three things. It's either doing the thing faster, which essentially in a company means doing it cheaper, or it's doing the thing better, or it's doing a thing you couldn't do before. That's how you do productivity, and that's how technological revolutions have always worked. If you're doing a thing faster, that has an impact on the number of people you need to do the thing. But if you're a company that has a lot of growth or a lot of ambition, you may still be interested in increasing your appetite for that function. That is called the Jevons paradox. And it generally points to the fact that when you start utilizing a resource more efficiently, instead of actually using less of it, you tend to use more of it because it represents a competitive advantage that you have in your fight to dominate your market. If you've created a hack where your salespeople are more efficient in the market, you're not going to fire salespeople. You're going to hire more salespeople to outpace your competitors on sales. On the quality thing, it really depends on your business. And I think CFOs can be very strategically involved in the board, in the leadership conversations around how much should we value quality increases. I'll give you a very simple example. Support, customer service. You needed to have people who spoke a bunch of languages 20 years ago in order to reply to your customers in their language. Today, we reply in Japanese to Japanese customers. Nobody on the team speaks Japanese. All right. We're replying the same thing, but we're replying with a higher quality because it's in the customer's language and they appreciate that more. How much do we value that? It depends on our business, on our account value, and on what our customers are expecting from us. And that number is going to be different for each company. And then on the things that you couldn't do before, again, it comes down to the specifics of the business. But I feel that where CFOs can be very collaborative with the rest of their teams in thinking about productivity is how much faster can we make great decisions as we operate as a company? If it takes 3 months to make a strategic decision on a new product or to enter a new market or to change a part of our infrastructure, and we can do that in 2 months instead of doing it in 3 months, that's a tremendous amount of market opportunity and strategic advantage versus our competition. So putting a dollar value to that is going to depend on the project. It's going to depend on the risks. It's going to depend on the upside. But I think that the ways in which to avoid just falling in bucket one and saying, by the way, we've done the equation and we're looking at it, is one of the ways in which we can sort of broaden that conversation for the impact on the people involved and the companies involved.
A question to you, Gabriel, again, sorry to put you again on the spot in terms of more like, hopefully we have made like CFOs quite excited about enabling their team and using more AI tools and Dust in particular. One key aspect of a CFO is like they want to buy a certain way. They want predictability. They want something, like no surprises, no usually bad surprises. And so you're also building agents, and I would assume that those agents have a different value. Like not everyone in a company is paid the same, right? The engineers are. We are seeing the number, or the data scientists in the US, they are sometimes paid in the billions. How do you translate that for agents? So how do you price an AI tool, especially for those CFOs? You have variable costs. You are delivering a variable value in terms of, because no agents is as valuable. How do you bridge that for CFO today?
At the end of the day, value is what dictates a sustainable price in the market. Okay. So as we progress on the development and the deployment of these tools, every company is going to try to understand how much value they are getting out of it, and therefore how much they're willing to pay for them. My strong belief is that there will be a fragmentation of pricing models when it comes to generative artificial intelligence. I'll give a couple of examples for a CFO. Your engineering team might need to consume many more tokens for its own internal productivity, launching 10 coding agents per engineer on a daily basis. And what you're going to try and understand is how reported productivity for that team has increased. How one of the engineers on our teams spends more than $10,000 in Gen AI tokens per month. They also happen to be one of the most senior and most productive engineers on the team. And we believe that it is in the interest of their company for them to spend that budget the same way a marketing person would spend advertisement budget on Facebook to do their job. Another version of this technology is going to become quite commoditized. And so you're essentially looking at 20, 30, 40 euros or dollars per month to get access to basic tools, translation tools, summarization tools. And I think the way to think about those budgets is a much more linear per seat model, where you're essentially understanding how much can I invest in making the tools these people have access to generally more productive. So you can add all the AI add-ons that everybody's trying to sell you, or you can say, hey, I want to take a step back and have one price for all that actually does these things. But it's essentially packaged per human per month, because every human that has access to a computer has access to these tools. I don't think CFOs are trying to price electricity differently based on people's salaries. They generally say, if you have a laptop and you need electricity, that's good. We've put it in the G&A cost of the company and nobody has to worry about it. And then I think for certain specific tasks, there are going to be opportunities to really measure business outcome. I think building complex analyses of the market was something that you used to pay an agency or a consultant tens of thousands of dollars to do, and that would take weeks to come back. If you're able to get a report that has the same value, you're going to be willing to pay the same amount. And I think that that's the world that we're going towards in tasks that have relatively measurable impact on the business.
Very clear. I think we are almost at time for our conversation, and I will want to leave a bit of time for Q&A with the audience. But maybe one last question, more practical in terms of like a checklist of things that a CFO should do after 30 days, especially like today. Like again, we just entered Q4, planning for 2026 is going to be in full swing. What kind of like heuristics or at least like checklists would you advise a CFO to do to baseline and then iterate in its use of AI in their company?
Like the CFO itself or the function or a use of AI in the company in general? What
I
should
think
we say?
CFO as the leader of the company, as a C level.
I'll have maybe some people will not like the answer, but I would get back to what Gabriel said earlier, which is the mindset correct about that? Are people, afraid? Are they, enthusiastic? Are they proficient? Are they willing, etc.? So it's not something you measure, very specifically. I mean, you can do surveys and so on, but I would test that, in the conversations when we prepare the plans and so on. Before I joined Photoroom, I asked an retrospectively very naive question, or I sent an article and resources about, use of AI in marketing. Just before I joined, just like, okay, I saw that and so on. And the answer from the CEO was, oh yeah, but I think we could have added to this article because the team is so ahead and proficient. So, it's for us CFOs to check, okay, is the mindset correct? Do people understand what's at stake? And its notion, this opportunity cost, oh, you're trying to save $10,000 on this, but have you thought about what time it frees up? It frees up for your best engineers and what they can do with this time and how this impacts your top line and so on. And it's true, many people, companies have a very wrong perception of CFOs, which is, oh, these people are obsessed with cost and, they're stingy or whatever, urban legend. The truth is, I think most of us are not at all obsessed with cost. We're obsessed with revenues and growth. And then obviously not at all costs, because you have to be able to have a good story and good unit economics. So we're rather the guardians of growth, revenue, unit economics, but not even directly the bottom line. If it's a good growth trajectory with good unit economics, I think we're happy. And so, yeah, no very sophisticated model, but at this stage, 3 years after kind of, the emergence of AI mainstream, because it's just 3 years, we forget it, but it was in Q3 or Q4 2022 that ChatGPT really emerged. It's not a long time, how's the mindset? What's the pulse? Sorry, it was a long answer.
And what about you, Gabriel? What would you do you advise in terms of the agentic transformation of CFO? Is it something that you push them, or you just let them, if they're ready, they're ready, or do you try to catalyze these movements?
So I think for a relatively young and small company like us, trying to convert people who really don't want to listen to your message is a very bad way of spending your time and energy. So we definitely don't try and persuade people that don't see the same reality or the same short-term future as we do. What we try and make available to CFOs who have the same instinct, but maybe not the same granularity or sort of checklist of questions is to give them an opportunity to participate in the conversations that they may not be in, but that they will definitely be brought in when the scale of the opportunities or the costs actually emerge. So it's like, as your company is thinking about its next year plan, how does the engineering team plan to make aggressive use of coding agents in order to increase their productivity? Is there even a plan around that? And it is completely imaginable that every single person should be using up roughly their salary in coding agents to increase their output. You still benefit from that, by the way, because you don't have the externalities of having to ramp up people and train additional people and potentially having to pay agency fees for hiring them. So there are ways in which you can also help the teams think out of the box, especially hiring managers. In terms of guidelines, I know that one of the questions we often get is, what are the gains we should be seeing and what are the gains we should be expecting? There's a very important quote by Nikolai that I think goes something like, in technology, we're often disappointed by the change in the short term and astounded by the change in the longer term. And we're rarely just a couple of years into a transformation that a decade from now is going to make the world feel just as different as the world today feels from 2006 when the iPhone didn't exist. And in some ways, maybe even deeper. So the best way to prepare the company that you're the CFO of is to ask the questions of like, if this technology really works the way the optimists think it does, what is going to be very different in 5 years' time? And what is going to be the same? Your brand as an employer is still going to be as important. You're going to have to attract the best talent. The story you tell that talent about how they can use AI tools is going to matter to them, because if they can't feel like they're going to learn about Gen AI at your company, they're probably going to take another offer. The productivity of your teams is probably going to increase. Should you be setting the bar at 30%? Should you be setting the bar at 50% and see which teams come back and say that's impossible? How should you be leading that conversation and helping them get granular on what best-in-class practices already exist? Does your team even know in a unified way, all the leaders at the leadership team meeting, do they all know what is currently technically possible? Has somebody suggested a workshop with a leading AI platform to just say, this is what works today on legal. This is what works today on engineering. This is what works today on marketing. Think about what's going to work in 5 years' time. And I think that is one of the ways in which, again, Julien, I completely agree. CFOs are actually generally business drivers and very enthusiastic about, pouring more fuel on the fires as long as the fires are connected to upside. And so being a force for exploration in that is going to be, I think, very, very powerful.
Super interesting. Maybe one question from the audience, because we are running out of time, and I'll select the most voted ones for spirit of democracy. And I think that's where you can both address it, maybe Julien a bit more. Like, how does the best finance AI stacks look like today for EU companies? Photoroom is an AI company. You're a European company. What can you give us a bit of your favorite list of tools? And I think we have one of them today with us.
Yeah, not sure I can give a little, like, to me, more than AI is first automation. Then in your tools, you can have AI embedded, and that's quite important. So we have, for example, our visualization tool, for data, and work on it with data, has a great AI functionality. Okay. So you look at your graphs and your reports and so on, your dashboards, and if you need something, you ask the AI inside, and that's great. But we don't buy an AI tool. We buy a visualization tool. We buy an accounting tool that has very good advanced automation functionalities. So that's it. And then we just complement with whatever AI you want to use for doing your business cases or your research and so on. Plus, as we said internally, we use Dust.
I think there's some forms of AI that are useful to finance teams actually predate Gen AI too. It's important to remember that Monte Carlo simulations have been very valuable tools for stochastic predictions on a number of situations. And they're not like technically Gen AI. They are interesting, probabilistic tools that have really helped the finance function be a richer participant in the conversation about scenarios, stress testing the possible options, helping people think about sort of non-linear outcomes. And so I would also really expect top teams to have those as part of their stack. I also think there's a famous as Frenchmen we tend to quote Frenchmen more often than not, but Cartier-Bresson, a famous photographer, always said, "The best camera is the one you've got on you when things happen." And I think that what is actually very important today is that the people on your team have access to the tools to bring the energy down to zero when it comes to trying something out. Hey, I wonder if I could have done a first version of this report with an AI agent. Hey, I wonder if I could have actually just filled in the database with an agent without having to actually know how to write the code myself. I've been told that these visualization tools can help me draw graphs very easily. I wonder how it would have looked if I had just tried this. There's all these opportunities that your smartest, most empowered team members have to reinvent the way they work is the lost opportunity if you haven't provided them with a platform to try it out. So I'd say that almost any tool is better than no tool today, and that almost all the companies that I can think of that are ambitious, top of their class, top quadrant, have rolled this out pretty broadly.
Maybe one last question to finish off. We were discussing initially that you need to embrace it because you need to be an early adopter. You need to be optimistic about where the future is going. In some companies, and maybe some are there today, some of those employees are there because they believe and they are bought in, but their colleagues may not, or they may be a bit more risk averse. You were mentioning the French mindset. Is there some, and they are always looking for statistics or just to prove the ROI. We're mentioning time saved or money saved or risk reduced. Those are the usual in B2B. Are there already like some works that have been published that you're leveraging yourself? Or are we still in the phase where you need to believe, you need to have this space, and this will eventually come when you address your teams or your prospects or your own leadership? Are we still at the belief stage today, or are we slowly moving towards more hard data to evangelize?
I'm very convinced of it. I think there are use cases where the future is very much in our hands. Like I produce complex reports on everything that has happened internally at my company using agents. That is something that would have taken hours of my time or hours of a chief of staff's time. That is something that is now being done automatically every week for the benefit of my entire company. Engineers at some of our customers are getting real-time updates from a sales call happening at the other end of the company on a feature that they're working on, which allows them to understand how other people might perceive the value of the product they're working on. This is stuff that was previously not happening at all, or happening in meetings, or happening slowly, or happening imperfectly. I don't think the belief stage exists there. Ask anybody who's had to reply to a customer service ticket in Japanese whether they feel that we're at the belief stage or the ROI stage when it comes to doing that. I think in those cases, it's quite concrete.
Super clear. I think it's a wrap for this fantastic discussion. Thank you for both for all the insights, and my personal takeaway are first that the CFO is more than just the bottom line; it's also a revenue driver, and I think we should completely respect that and keeping that in mind, and also that the future is already here, and we should embrace it as fast as we can if you want to be the best in the world. So as we wrap, just a quick reminder so to tune in to our upcoming summit sessions. Obviously, all sessions will be recorded, so if you miss them, you'll get a second chance to watch them, and you will receive an email at the end of the conference with the full list of replays. For me, like if you want to discuss strategies or of monetizing AI, or learn how Stripe can help your business automate, and we are mentioning automation, finance and revenue function in particular, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Jérôme Tomasini, or just reach out to me at Jérôme@stripe.com. And I think we are pretty much at time. So thank you so much all, and have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, Jérôme. Bye.